Hello, everyone. Welcome for one more KIELive session. Today, unfortunately, we will not have our host, Karina. She's on PTO, so hopefully she'll have a great time off. Um, so we have a session today that I'm really excited about that will present the next generation that we are working on the forms. And for present today, we have Pere Fernandez. Pere has been around for 15 years, his tenure. Of course, he came from an acquisition of the team that before, but he is been doing work related to forms for a long, long time. He's very experienced on that. He's definitely our subject expert on the topic. And today he will present these next generation of forms. Um, so hi, I'm looking. I keep an eye on the chat, and please like the video, subscribe, and as I used to do, it's weird to not have Karina here. But yeah, how Vikas, Karsten, Fernando, Eder. So hi everyone, and let me bring our special guest to talk about forms. Hi Perry.
Hey Alex, how's it going?
Good. How about you?
Yeah, really great. I'm really happy to be here. I'm missing Karina, by the way, but yeah.
Yeah, today you're stuck with just me.
Okay, I think we are going to survive.
Yeah, yeah. So Perry, I briefly introduced you. You're a senior software engineer working for
Yeah.
Red Hat for 15 years. It's a long time. It's a beautiful tenure in here, and I
Yeah.
think it's your third generation working forms. Can you give us a little bit?
Yeah. So first, I come, as you said, from an acquisition that happened 10 years ago, roughly. Uh, I was working in a company that we had our BPM suite. In that company, I was working on the on basically on the content management area, and as a part of my responsibilities there, it was basically the form displayer and the form editor that we were basically building for that purpose. So actually, after being acquired by Red Hat, we decided to have a basically we decided to bring in that formatter and that forms engine into the JBPM. I think it was versions 5 and 6,
Yeah, five.
if I'm not wrong. Uh, Later, that formatter was working fine, but had some limitations. And actually, the technology compared to the others editors around and the full framework was a bit outdated, let's say. And we built another formatter in the same technology stack with new features, etc. That one was great, and yeah, it was working fine. But with the new Cogito project, yeah, here we are building new forms again.
Yeah, that's awesome. But I think this time we have a special sauce in here. That's what we're gonna see today, and I'm very excited to see your presentation because
Yeah.
it's very unique. I think you managed to create a situation that it provides out of the box features, but at the same time a lot of flexibility for developers. I
Yeah.
think we may be providing a very unique value here on the business process and business automation space. So feel free to share. I will share your screen right now,
Yeah,
and
sure.
let's have this conversation. That's great.
Good. So yeah, let's start. So how to use custom form for user task with Kogito and Quarkus. So first, let's have a little introduction. Uh, I guess that everybody here knows or should know what a form is. We've seen it a lot of times, probably in surveys, registration forms, etc. But just for the sake, let's say that the form is the UI that let's allow users to fill in data that then can be basically used for a different purpose, like BPM engine or whatever. When talking about business processes, forms basically are used when the process requires some interaction with the user. This happens when starting a form. Usually, I don't know how many of you are familiar with Business Central, but there was a table where you could see all the, let's say, processes available in the system, or you could basically open a form and start the process from there, fill the data basically, and start the process with the data. And then another place where forms are required are in human tasks. Let's say you are a person that is working on in his own task inbox, and you have a task assigned to you. And in order to make to complete the task and make the process continue, you have to fill a form, provide some data in it, and just complete the task, and that's it. So
simple, right, Pere?
yeah,
Why
well,
so much about the forms?
yeah, can I finish now or should I continue?
Yeah, and I will bring this while we are here. Like Donato made a comment, forms are like a shooting at a moving target, and
Yeah,
absolutely true.
yeah, actually, yeah. I mean, explain like this is quite simple, but there are some. They can be really tricky if you if you think
Okay.
about it. So yeah, so basically, I'm moving forward in my presentation. Okay, so
Mm-hmm.
basically, for uh, from what we've been trying to provide to customers or and users, are basically like, let's say, two types of forms. The first type is like the auto-generated type, which is they are generated by the runtime. Uh, Basically, the GN knows what process variables we have or what task that assignment we have, and basically it can generate a form out of the box, choosing the right form controls for those for the data types, and then the user can use it. And then on the other side, we have the forms that are built by customers. Probably, I don't know how many of you have ever seen this screen over there, but this is the old form editor that we built some years ago. So basically, we were our tooling was providing a kind of an editor where the user was able to just place fields in, move them, do some configurations, etc., and then the task inbox was somehow able to consume those forms, display them on the screen, fill in with data, trigger validations, etc. So let's say that these are like the two types of forms that we are more or less used to support.
Yeah. Yeah, but the build by customer, the designer form, that's where we can expand it about the challenges, right? Because
Yeah,
it's easy to do it a quickie
yeah,
form that you do a quickie prototype. For instance, you drag and drop the fields that you have
exactly,
defined in your or your data model or your data process or your process. You can bring all these fields quickly to the screen. That's awesome. But
yeah,
real world is a little bit more complex, right? So
exactly,
we need
exactly,
to load data from database, or you need to change content of a field depending on the selection.
exactly.
Country, state, and city is a very good example of that thing. So, and this flexibility or this complexity, when you need, it's really hard to achieve with just drag and
Exactly.
drop kind of forms, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's the main challenge. In the end, those forms are stored as a definition, let's say, and they are displayed in the screen. So we can provide a set of, let's say, configurations available on the editor to play with CSSs and some validations, etc. But there is a point where the customer or the real world is asking for more, and we cannot give it with this kind of editor. Well, we cannot give it. It's really hard to meet all the expectations from a customer.
Yes, and at one point you also deviate a lot from standard technologies because we could, for instance, provide, and I think we do at some extent with the old forms designer that's still available in Business Central, that some hooks for validation, some hooks that you could do custom code. But now, when you look at the forms around, you're looking for Bootstrap, React,
Yeah,
HTML, CSS, JavaScript. So it's way more. You're looking to more standard technology than something that you just hook parts on of your
yeah,
code, right?
Yeah, exactly, and that's what we are targeting now. I mean, we are targeting basically what we want to use is bring those technologies that you mentioned, like yeah, HTML, Bootstrap, React, uh, where the developer is more comfortable with, and bring them here and somehow make that try to use them inside of the new forms. I'm probably
Looking forward to see
yeah.
that.
So yeah, let's continue. So let's talk about the forms in Cogito runtime tools right now. Okay. So right now, what we have is we now only have auto-generated forms. Okay. Basically, the runtime is providing us a JSON schema, something similar to this, in a REST endpoint. And our runtime tools, that could be our Quarkus extension or the task console, is using uniforms to basically convert this JSON schema into a form like this in the screen. Uniforms is the kind of tool that provides a lot of, it's a React library that does this work really well. I mean, you can plug in different themes, and we have a PatternFly theme especially for it that help us in this area. So that's what we have at this point. So only auto-generated forms. So now let's see what we can do. So what about customizing forms? So yeah, let's use real forms. So that's what we want to provide now. We know, as we discussed before, we know that the formator is really great for building stuff fast. We know that the formator lets you sketch things. It gives you also some safety in the sense that you know that that form is going to work. But in the end, it's not flexible. Usually, it's not flexible enough for a real world. So that's what we are going to solve. So what are we going to offer now? I mean, we're going to support HTML and React forms. Let's say that our runtime tools, Quarkus extension, will let you create and consume, will let you use this kind of HTML and React forms inside of the extension, and the forms should be stored as a resource. You are going to see all of this during the demo time. Uh, we are going to support some configuration about the form resources you want to use. So if you want to use external JavaScript or different CSS files, you can link them in the form configuration. You're going to see that on the demo. If you want to use a specific version of Bootstrap, you could use it and tweak the form to use it and whatever. So we are going to also provide a new JavaScript API that will let communicate your form with the runtime tool that is displaying it. In this case, we are only at this point we are only targeting the Quarkus extension, but hopefully we are going to have the same experience with it in the task console. So your form will be in sync with the runtime tool somehow. In order to simplify your life, we are going to provide a new CLI tool that basically, based on the JSON schema that the runtime is generating for us, we are going to generate forms out of the box. You're going to see this in the demo right now. But basically, this way you can just generate forms that are going to work, are functional, and you can just basically take them and use them in the Quarkus extension, or if you will, use it in your own applications. I mean, we are just helping you to build forms with this CLI tool. And finally, we are giving our extension some code editing capabilities in order to just have, so the developer can show see what forms you have there and do fast changes and try them in live. So that's I think that's
I can't wait to see.
yeah. I see. Now I'm seeing.
You're setting high expectations now.
Yeah, I see that. Yeah. Hope I'm going to meet them. So yeah, I don't know if you want. We can start with a small demo.
Of course.
Yeah, sure. So let me escape. First, I'm going to show you the project that I'm working in. I built this project for this KIELive. Okay.
Just 1 second. Can you
Yeah.
increase a little bit this font size?
I don't know how to do it in VS Code. I tried it yesterday, but
Command plus, I think.
that's
Uh,
I can, if you want, if you want, I can open it with a different,
No,
with a
no,
very,
no, yeah. Let me find. I have a different shortcut, but yeah, that's not that important. Yeah,
yeah. Okay, well, if you
go
want,
ahead. Control plus. I think in your setup is Control plus.
okay, yeah, good.
Thank you very much, Donato.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
had better mention Command Plus, but I know that you are not on a Mac.
no, no. So yeah, thank you. As you can see, I'm not very used uh, to VS Code. So okay, so what I was saying, this is a project that I built based on the process user task Quarkus with consoles that we have in our Cogito example repo. I enhanced it a little bit to make use of our Quarkus extension. Everything that I'm going to do is just with our Quarkus extension, okay, and the CLI tool by the of course. Uh, so just to check, I add the dependency here. I would recommend you that if you don't know what Quarkus extension is, take a look at Paulo's presentation. I think he did 3 weeks ago. I'm not sure, but he basically was presenting this Quarkus extension that we are working on, and he basically introduced it a little bit what we are going to see. Okay, so. Basically, this project is about a hiring process. Okay, we have a candidate. This is a candidate Pojo, which has name, an email, and an address. Okay, address, by the way, has 4 fields: country, state, city, and street. Typical setup, I would say. And then we have an interview object that has some properties. One of them is the interviewer, which is the person who is making the interview, the date that the interview happened, a string to basically type in the skills that are relevant from the candidate, the salary for that the candidate wants, and yeah, and a hire boolean, which is basically the assessment of hiring or not hiring the candidate. The process, I guess that you can, let's give it a time to open. Okay, there we go. Quite simple, by the way. So here we have a starting point, and basically the candidate will move through all these steps. Okay, so if I check the data types, so it's, okay, the process data, we have for the process variables, we have a candidate object here, which type is candidate, and we have an interview object variable, sorry, which is of the type interview. Quite easy. And now for the tasks, going at take a look at the assignments. What we have is, sorry, I should make this screen. I guess that how to make it.
Control minus.
Okay, now it's okay. So I guess that now it's better. So for in the input, we have a candidate that we're going to receive from the process, which is going to be coming from the candidate variable. And as an output, the form is going to generate an interview that is going to be stored in an interview variable. And it's going to give an updated candidate because we are going to fill the address here during the process that is going to be stored in the candidate variable of the process. So let's say that an easy setup, I would say.
Okay.
Okay, so I have right now, I have the Quarkus running in dev mode here. Okay, so I'm going to show you the code, the current state. So by the way, this is the Quarkus dev UI. So the extension that we added, basically, if you start the Cogito Quarkus project in dev mode, this is the kind of UI that you get for the UI that you get. So to access it, you have to do access localhost 8080/q/dev. Okay, and our extension has a discard. Here you can see the list of process instances, tasks, jobs, and now forms. Okay, you see that there are 0 forms. So basically what it says that we are going to have auto-generated forms. So if I go to the tasks, let's give it some time. Okay, we see all the tasks here. And if I open the task, you see that we have this form, which is the auto-generated one. You see the candidate form here. So we see the address fields. We see the email and the name of the candidate. Heather,
So
you are here.
at this point, this is a built-in capability. You didn't know custom forms. So if you don't have any custom form,
this
this
is what
is going to be displayed on the task list, for instance.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So,
Gotcha.
so yeah, basically this is what we are generating from. We are getting the JSON schema from the runtime, and we are generating these forms, which looks well, but you see that maybe you don't want these field orders here. Maybe it looks like they are in kind of alphabetical order. Probably you want to change the layout, etc. And we cannot do it. So now let's start building forms and make them work.
Yeah, and just confirm, you showed in the card there was 0 forms. It's because this is auto-generated, it's not counting as a custom.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. This does not count as a form. So if I go to the form section of the our Quarkus extension, you will see that there are no forms. Okay. There is nothing right now.
So how can we build this now?
Yeah. So let me go here. So I'm going to clear so you can see. So I have right now I have the CLI tool here. I'm going to showcase how it works. So right now I'm going to do it just by
increase a little bit this font size again. I think we need the.
How can I do it here?
Control plus, try it. Maybe work.
Okay. Yeah. Same. Okay. So I have the form generation in the form generation CLI in this project. Okay. Basically, there are going to be distributions for Windows, Mac OS, and Linux. I'm using the Linux one. Okay. And what this CLI is going to do basically is going to first ask for the path to a Cogito project. This CLI knows how to search for the JSON schema that the runtime generates on every build. So right now, because I'm inside of the project folders, I can just use the dot here. Now it lets you select what is the type of form we want to generate. Right now, we support PatternFly. I'm not sure about the version. I think it's the 8. Well, I need to check it. But for sure, we can generate Bootstrap forms for version 4.6. So the PatternFly forms, the output of these forms are going to be React. PatternFly provides a good set of React components, and we thought that it was a good idea to just go ahead and use React for those forms, so we can take advantage of those cool widgets they have. And for Bootstrap, it's going to be just a plain HTML with some JavaScript and CSS. Now you're going to see how it looks like. So I'm going to use for simplicity. I have to say that for simplicity during this demo, I'm going to use only the Bootstrap forms because I think that most of the people is more familiar with HTML and everybody will understand everything better there. So launching the form CLI, it's going to ask us for some confirmation. And you saw it found 2 schemas basically for the 2 tasks that the process has. The hiring HR interview and the hiring IT interview. Basically, this name refers to, as you can guess, the first part is the process name, and the second part is the name of the task. So basically, we are chaining the process name and the task name to identify the form. So this is the kind of ID that we are going to use internally, just for you.
Okay, so at this point, do we have custom generated the code generated?
Exactly. Form. Yeah. So right now, if I go to my Cogito project, I'm going to just close everything. You will see that in the resources folder, we have a forms folder, which is new added. And you will see that we have a set of files here. Okay. Basically, for each form, we have 2 files. One of them is the HTML1. In this case, because we are Bootstrap, we are generating the HTML1. Just repeating one more time. This HTML file basically contains, you see, it's basically the same as we saw in the screen. We have a candidate, a field set with the candidate, a field set with the address. We have the address fields here. We have, again, the email, etc. And we are basically all the fields. But we are also adding some JavaScript utility functions and some APIs that we can use during the form, let's say, lifecycle. Okay. The first method that we have here is the set form data. Okay. basically what we are doing here is this method, what it's going to do is receive some data from the runtime. Later I'm going to show you how it's going to work, but this data is going to come from the runtime, and basically it's going to fill in the form controls with that data. Okay, so and this is this is what is expected to do. Then we have the get form data method, which basically it generates the output of the form. Based on the output of the task, we know what we should be posting on the form. So basically, it takes the data from the inputs and generates the JSON, basically the payload in a JSON object that we can just post into a runtime. Okay. Then we have this is an empty method, but probably we may consider having some code here added in the future. This is a validate method. This is going to be used for validation. Okay, here you can put your custom validations, and here you can basically interrupt the submission of the form. If you throw an error here, the submit of the form will stop, and the user will basically stay in the screen. So to continue editing. Here, okay, this is the interesting part, I would say. Here is how we are going to connect this form with our runtime tool, actually our Quarkus dep extension. Okay, when we add this form, we are going to make this, when we display this form in the screen, we are going to make this form object available for you. This form object has an open form method, and this where we are going to pass a configuration, and this will be in charge of connect to the runtime to the runtime tools, give you some data in order to start making the form working. Okay, so the configuration that right now we need to provide to the open form method is basically an object with an onOpen method that will receive data, which is the data that is going to be passed to a set form data, and additionally a context. This context is going to give you information about what's going on in the console at that time. You have information about the current task, like task name, task state, when the task started, etc. If you need to do, to somehow do some dynamic stuff in the form, you have also access to the current user that is logged in the console, so you know the user ID and which are his groups. So you can just, show and hide fields, pre-fill, whatever you need to do. You also have the JSON schema for this task, which is interesting if you want to use validations there are a bunch of libraries that can do validation based on JSON schema. We are not doing it because we think that we don't want to tie you to this, but you could. So the JSON schema will be here if you want to use it. And additionally, you are going to get information. Well, I don't know if the people is used to the new task lifecycle in Cogito, but basically we are going to receive also the phases the task can transition to. So this at this point is might not be quite important, but probably in the future we are going to have capabilities to add the submit buttons inside of the form. Right now, the submit buttons are placed in the console, in the Quarkus extension, let's say, but in the future we could have capabilities of doing the submit directly here. So when the connection is established, this on open form it's going to be called, and what we are getting as an output is this form API object. This form API object is an object that let you hook some custom code into the form lifecycle. For example, we have some hooks here like the before submit. This is a method that you can implement. You can get rid of this code if you want, and the form will continue working. Well, if you get rid of the get form data method, probably the form will just submit empty data. But you can get rid of all these hooks, and the form will continue working. This before submit will be called before the form gets submitted. So here it would be a place to do validations before the submit. And again, I repeat, if you throw an error here, the submission is going to stop and the user is going to stay here. So it's a way to do some actions before the data is posted into the runtime.
Great. So it's a very simplified API that we can manipulate to do some work, but it's very simple.
Yeah, that's the idea. I mean, the idea is to provide a very simple API, not much fancy stuff, not complex setups that everybody can use. And again, if you want to get rid of it because you want to use this form in a different application, yeah, you can do it. I mean, just get rid and that you can remove it, and that's the form will continue.
Now I'd love to see this running, how
Yeah,
you can see this form running.
yeah,
And I think you may need to start the dev mode, right?
yeah, exactly. Sorry.
Okay, no worries. While you are starting the dev mode, we have a question
Yeah.
from Gerard Num. If the schema changes, will the generation tool preserve customizations, or it is strictly one way?
Is so I guess that what the question is about is what happens is the JSON if JSON schema changes and what happens with the form.
Yeah.
Okay, at this point, the CLI tool only generates the form, and that's it. We are not, let's say, updating the form. I guess that in the if we it would be really hard for us to do this, because at some point you're going to see that we can change this form in a lot of ways, and it would be really hard for us to do this work. So I would say that when the form is there, at this point we cannot do we cannot do anything to change it and modify it.
Yeah. At the same time, one thing while you are you getting the dev mode running? So another thing is that it's up to you how you also organize your code, because you can extract any custom code that you are
Yeah,
doing to
exactly,
validation or something that's more
exactly.
heavily that you need to an external JavaScript file or any file externally, like TypeScript could
Yeah,
be an option, and you regenerate. When you
exactly.
regenerate, you have the same form API, so you have new fields probably in the screen that you may have
Yeah,
changed, but you can rely on the code that you already have, so and just tweak. So
yeah,
it's a little bit of code organization. I think you can achieve a high reuse of custom code, um, and at the same time take advantage of the code generation.
yeah. Yeah. Just before it started, I wanted to finish something that I was
Oh,
before continuing. I
sorry.
wanted to. Okay, we have a lot of callbacks here, like the after submit, which is going to be called uh, after the form is really submitted. Here we're going to get the response from the runtime saying if it's been successful or if it has failed, and you can just make some actions with that. You can also get some information about about the response. So it's like. With this, you can do more actions here in the form depending on how the submission happened. And finally, we have the get from data method that basically it's calling the get from data method that we already generated just to return the data. Okay. Additionally, while it starts, I'm showing the config file. Here on the config file, what we do have is the list of resources that the form is going to require to execute. Here, for example, this is a Bootstrap form, and we are saying, okay, if we want to load these styles. Here, we're using the Bootstrap minified CSS. We are have to say we are using CDN links here. We are not allowing local files. This is probably an improvement that someone at some point we are going to do, but for now, only CDN links. And you can also load the scripts like jQuery, or in this case, basically, these are the ones that are recommended by Bootstrap. So we are adding it by default. So you have jQuery 3.2.1 Slim and the Bootstrap bundle minified that Bootstrap requires. So this means that all these resources are going to be loaded with the form.
And we could have our custom code, like
Yeah,
customized code,
yeah,
expressed here in the script, right?
you will see that. You will see that, Alex.
Oh, cool. I'm
Okay.
ahead of myself. Sorry.
Yeah, yeah.
So
And
excited.
yeah, yeah, me too, me too. And yeah, and finally we have the schema, which basically is a string representation of the JSON schema that at this point we are keeping it here just for further uses that we may need. Okay. So right now, I guess that the runtime has already started. That's it. So if I refresh this screen, let's give it some time, please. Okay, you see that we have two
Increase
forms.
a little bit the font because it's hard to see.
Yeah, I will by my demo have to give it to bring it back to 100%. Okay.
Okay. But now we can see there's two.
Yeah. So basically, here you see that we have two new forms, and now let's see what we have. So I'm going to resize again, and if I go to the form section, there we go. We have the two forms that we already generated. We have the hiring HR interview one and the IT interview. Here in this screen, you can apply filtering. Right now we have 2 forms. It's not enough for a lot of cool filtering, but basically you can filter by name, you can apply sortings, etc. So in the case you have a lot of forms, it can give you, more flexibility, let's say, and you can switch into this card view that, well, in the case you prefer this kind of view, so you can basically choose from one view to another. So now let's open this form and see what we find. So when opening this form, we reach the form screen. Here, as you can see, we have this screen is divided in 2 areas. Here in the left side, we have the source code of the form. This basically displays the form, the source code of the form, and also the connections. Connections basically are the resources that the form requires, as I was saying, the scripts, which are jQuery and Bootstrap bundle and the CSS. And here we have the representation of the form, or more the visualization of the form. Okay, so here you have what you see. What is cool here is that you can do modification with the source code. For example, let's move these fields a little bit. So because I don't want the candidate fields after the address, and move them just before. And if you saw that some buttons appeared here. So we have a save button that will save the content of this form into your project, so you will be able to see these changes in VS Code. A play button, that basically the play button is going to refresh the form visualization, so you can see what you are doing in real time. And after saving, you could be able to just basically with this, what we are going to do is basically do changes here, apply changes, and be able to test the form in real life in the task inbox. So right now, what I'm going to demo is how we can apply those changes here, and let's start to making this form, which right now looks a bit, let's say, so, and let's put this form in shape.
Why that looks great. And while you can start doing some changes in the form, okay, making one comment is we understand that Dev UI, Quarkus UI is not a place for editing files, so we wouldn't expect that you open Java classes in here. But talking to other people of the Quarkus ecosystem, Max Anderson, for instance, it makes sense to have the editor for the forms in here, because this gives us live load of the content, so you can debug in real time all the changes that you're doing. So you don't need to go back to your editor, make any change, and then go back here. So it is a lot about the developer efficiency, the developer workflow efficiency.
Exactly. We are not expecting the developer to do hard work here. It's more about, okay, I have to change the layout a little bit. I have to adjust some pixels. I want to add some CSS. You can do this work here, and then just see it live in the task inbox, so you can see how the form is going to behave directly, without having to restart the system, etc. So that's just for efficiency, as you said. So right now. Well, just one more. I just added the name and the email of the user in the same row. Right now, if you refresh, they are basically, because the form has no space, they are in vertical alignment. But if you give it more space, you see that the formulas are basically they are taking the same row. So I'm going to apply more changes here. Like for example, I'm going to do changes on the address, in the candidate address. For example, to put the city, country, and state in the same row. For example, right now I'm going to remove the city, country, and state. I'm going to add them in the same row. So let's refresh. Okay, so there we go. For example, I'm going to change the order of the fields in the interviewer. Again, I will do having the. I'm going to add the interviewer date and the interviewer date and the interviewer field in the same row. So I'm going to remove the date and the interviewer. Where are you? Okay, there we go. So I should change here. I'm going to put the hire at the very end. And so I would say that for now it's okay. Well, I'm going to do one more change. I'm going to change, for example, on the skills, I'm going to change it for a text area just to have a bigger input. So for example, where are the skills here? There we go. So I just change it for a text area, and I'm going to add the dollar symbol. I'm going to append a dollar symbol into the salary just to make it more clear that it's money, what we're talking about. So now if I press play, you see that all the changes have been applied, and the salary should have a dollar here. I cannot see it in my screen, but yeah, it should be okay. So if I save now, theoretically the form has been successfully saved. Let me go to the VS Code, and if I open the form, you see that these changes, for example, in the interview, we have the interviewer and the date in the same row. Well, basically, you see that all the changes have been applied. Okay, so the file has been successfully saved here. Okay, right now let's go to the task inbox and see what's going to happen there. So what we are going to see is that right now, if I open this form, okay, yeah, there we go. We have the form with Bootstrap styles, and that's it. So let's fill some data in, like a country.
Okay, but let me just understand better.
Yeah.
So previous we saw here out-generated form, and now
exactly.
we just magically happen that we have the custom display there.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. This is the custom form that the custom form that we built and we modified here in the same Quarkus extension. We save it into VS Code, and then right now we are no longer using the auto-generated form. The Quarkus, our runtime tools know that we have a custom form here, and it's basically using that instead. It's loading all the resources that we were configuring, like the Bootstrap styling, etc. And it's just having the form, putting the form here in the screen, and using that JavaScript API that I show you, it's basically able to load the data from the candidate, like right now, and we'll be able to just generate the output of this form to be submitted to the runtime. So that's the situation. So if you want, I can just fill the form and see what's going to happen. For example, let's put some random values here, but let's say country somewhere, state, city, I think, well, let's see, Boston, I don't, street, whatever. Interviewer is going to be J-Doe, which is the current user. For the date, I'm going to select, well, this is sorry, I have the browser in Catalan, but I'm going to select today. The salary, let's give it a low salary, some skills, I don't know, React, Cogito, etc. Assessment of hiring, and yeah, complete the form. Okay, you saw here we have the notification that the form has been submitted. Sorry, I went to task inbox. Sorry. But you saw that the form was not read-only. I mean, the form was still editable. So we found that issue. And if I found I open the completed task, we're going to find the same issue. Basically, the form is still editable. Even though you cannot submit it because the buttons are not here, you can still just change the form. Mm-hmm. Okay. Now we're going to take a look at some of the hooks that we have in our form to basically do some try to solve this problem. Okay. So if I go to forms, I'm opening the same form again, and I'm going to add some disabled capabilities here. For example, it's going to be quite easy because we have two field sets, one for the candidate and another one for the interview object. So what I'm going to do is on the candidate, I'm going to give it an ID, which is going to be candidate container. And for the interviewer, sorry, what I'm going to do is give it another ID, which is going to be candidate interview container. And I'm going to add a new function here, a new JavaScript function, which basically is going to disable the form. So I'm going to create it. And it's going to be document, get element by ID, candidate container, disable. So disabled, sorry, equals to true. And I'm going to do the very same for the interview container. Okay, with this code right now, we have a function to call when we want to disable the form. The first place we're going to do it is in the after submit. Okay, we know that we have the after submit callback that is going to be executed when the form has been successfully submitted, when the data has reached the runtime, and you can and we have a response from it. So what we're going to do here, it's basically call our disable function. Again, we also know that the form is going to be enabled when we open a completed task, let's say. So something that we can do is that on this, when starting the form API, after getting the data and the context, we can do something here. Here, what we're going to do now is first check the context and say, okay, if the context task state, so we know that the context has a state object, and we know that the task has a state. So if the task state is equal to completed, what we are going to do is call this disable function. So this way, we know that when we open the form, if the task is completed, it's going to be disabled. Okay. Additionally to this, now that we are here, we can do more stuff. For example, something that we could do is we can initialize the interviewer field and use the user that we have in the context, for example. So what we can do is add this kind of code. So check the interviewer field and set the user that we have in the context. So we get from the context, we get the user and set the ID. So right now, if we press play, okay, the changes are applied here. There's not much to say because we don't have a context, but you see that, for example, the interviewer has a value. This is a mock data that we have here in our testing environment. So I can save the form. And if I go to my task inbox, I'm going to filter because I'm only interested in the human resources tasks. So, okay, so we are only going to show human resources task. Okay, if I open this task that has been completed, right now, we saw that the form has been disabled. So we know right now we've seen how to to add some custom code into a phase of the lifecycle, which is when opening the form. So right now we know how to do that. Let's go back and see what we can do if it still works with the submit. So I have this form here. I'm going to add some data, Spain, the state. I'm going to add, I think it's Santa Perpetua. State, I don't know. The interviewer, you see that is JDO. The date I'm going to select today again. The salary, I'm going to give it a good salary, let's say. Let's add some skills here. Let's say that higher. And if I complete, you see that right now the form got notified that the submission happened, and now we just disabled. So right now we know how these hooks, how to add our custom stuff, our custom logic in some points of the form lifecycle. When opening the form, and we know how to get code executed after the submission happened. Here you can use that for different things. I mean, we can show alerts based on the state of the response of the server, whatever. In this case, it's a simple example. Actually, this example about disabling the form is something that probably we are going to provide with a CLI tool in the future, because I think it's a quite common behavior. But yeah, this is what we can do with this. With the on open and the after submit.
That's great. Do you have more things to demo to us?
Yeah, actually, I have a lot of them.
Okay, so what do we have next? Because we have some questions that I want to bring you.
Okay, well. Yeah, just drop the questions here if you want.
Okay, so first question that I have is, how about repeating complex objects, collections? A table will be auto-generated?
Yeah, that's a good question. Actually, that's the limitation we have at this point. We are not supporting this kind of array of objects in the CLI tool. The CLI tool kind of supports list of simple types. I mean, like strings, etc., in the showing dropdowns. But list of objects is something that we still don't provide. That's something that we'd like to do at some point, but we don't. We have to be careful about the type of control we add here, because in the end, probably this is going to make the form quite complex, and probably the user won't want. Well, maybe that's not the solution the user wants. So I would say that for now we don't offer that.
Okay.
We are going to think about that in the future.
Yeah, so probably first release we'll keep this simple as is, and we'll collect feedback and figure out the best, less intrusive mechanism to provide collection support.
Exactly. Actually, if you want, I mean, you could the data. Let's say that your data will be there in the form. So if you want to use a specific form control, a specific table component or widget, you can use it. I mean, in the end, if you have a JavaScript library that does that displays tables, you could use it here if you want, because you are going to get the data. The fact that we don't generate the code doesn't mean that the data is not there. You are going to have the data. You just need to use the right control, the right table if you want.
So another question now from Donato. What if I change in VS Code? Is it possible to close the form and see the changes in the dev UI?
Not at this point. At this point, we don't have hot reload for our Quarkus extension. That's something that we need to investigate. We need to investigate at this point. Right now, the changes, they are working in one direction. I mean, you can edit here and you can save in VS Code, but if you do changes in VS Code, you have to restart. That's something that we need to see, because we don't know if that's going to affect somehow the Cogito runtime extension. That's something that we need to check.
And the last question that even people also reach me offline, we were talking about that support the React, but we didn't see any React. How does it look like? So you're hiding it?
I'm going to show it. I'm going to show it. Okay. So yeah, the React forms, the React forms are going to, basically they are going to use PatternFly styling. So the style would be very similar to the ones that we are showing there. We are showing with the auto-generated forms because it's the same library basically. But yeah, you can use React components there. The only limitation that we have here is that you can only use PatternFly components or regular React components or JSX, etc. At this point, we don't have a mechanism to use let's say different components from different npm packages, like I don't know, like Moment.js or different libraries. So regarding React components, we are only we only have available PatternFly components and regular React ones. So, but yeah, you can use React components. You're going to see it. Yeah.
Okay, so you need fast because we have less than 10 minutes.
Yeah, sorry. How many time we have?
7 minutes.
Okay, so let's. Okay, a lot of stuff. I think we spoke too much. So I have 3 demos to do. I have validations. I can do something for validations really fast, and then I can do some custom JS stuff. If you want, I can try to do everything in the same demo, and hopefully it's not going to break. Do you want me to go?
Yeah, let's see. You have 7 minutes.
Yeah, let's see. Okay, first regarding validations, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some validations on the skills and the salary. Okay, so basically we have a salary input here, and we have the skills. So for the salary already has a helper, but for the skills I'm going to add a helper div in order to keep the validation message. Okay. Right now, what I'm going to do is add some functions. I'm going to copy them from my document because I don't want to write them and make a mistake. So, which basically, for the salary, what they are doing is getting the input and getting the helper, remove all the validation stuff that we want to do, and basically checking that the salary is lower than $1 million. So if the salary is bigger than $1 million, basically what we are going to do is invalidate the field and return true or false. Well, basically return false and return true if the salary is valid. Okay, I'm going to do the same for skills. basically for skills, what I'm going to do, I'm going to force the user to have 5 skills. So this part of the it's basically the same, and here basically we are getting the content of the skills and checking if it has a length of 5. Okay, and now for this, what I'm going to do in order to have validations, I'm going to go to the before submit. Sorry, to the before submit is calling the validate form. So I'm going to search for this validate form function here, and I'm going to add some code that will be executed before the form is submitted. So what I'm going to do is execute this. So basically, I'm going to get 2 variables with the salary valid, skills valid, that are going to call this custom code that I just added. And basically, if any of those is invalid, I'm just going to throw an error that will stop the form submission and will keep the user here. Okay, so going to save these changes and going to test it really fast. So if I go here, okay, and if I try to, let's say I'm going to add a big salary here, blah, 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 blah. I try to complete, and basically the salary is too high. We should have we cannot earn more than $1 million. And basically here it says that it needs some skills. So if I try to add something, it's going to ask me that it should have 5 skills. So this way, using the before submit and throwing errors there, you can stop this form submission, etc. And if I have time, I'd like to show you the custom JS. I'm sorry for this because I think that I spoke too much. So I have this JavaScript file here, which is basically able to load data from a remote API. This is basically what I'm going to showcase is an example that we've been asked a lot, how to make dependent combos and how we can load data into combos from remote sources. So I made this script, which I have in my GitHub pages, which is doing that. It's basically fetching countries, a list of countries, a list of states, and a list of cities based on the country and the states. And what I'm going to do is just use the form, use this script inside of this form. So what I'm going to do is add it on the configuration of the file. So I'm going to add it here, going to save. I'm going to the source section. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to replace the country state, the country and state and city inputs to use select boxes that are going to use the functions that I have in that JavaScript file, okay? Whoops, sorry. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to paste the state one. Whoops. And finally, I'm going to paste the city. So right now, if I save and I play, I don't know if you want to see that on the form, but basically you see that the country is right now. If the country has this choose option here, and I can choose one of the countries here. State and city has nothing. So if I select, for example, Spain, because I know that Spain has states and cities, you see that here you can choose any of those states here. You can choose probably Cantabria, and you can choose then the city. If I change the state, for example, I go to Italy, maybe, you can then choose basically here. Oh, probably Lombardy. Okay, now. So basically what I'm doing here, this script, basically, you saw that how I can just use external scripts that are added in the connection section and use them inside of your form. And by the way, you also saw how you can connect, how you can load, call remote services, etc., by using the regular fetch functionality from JavaScript, etc. I don't know if it's worth it. See this in the task inbox, but you get the idea of what you can do here. So basically, you can add custom JavaScript that you can run here inside of the form. I don't know. Do you want me to show React, or should we jump into it?
Can you quickly show React in 2 minutes?
Okay, let's try. Let's see if the gods of the demo.
Yeah, let's see. If that works, we have another opportunity try it again.
Yeah, sure. So we have the, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to run the form CLI again, okay? Again, it's going to select me, it's going to ask me to select the Cogito project. I'm going to say that this is the current path. As you can see, it says the project already contains forms. So it asks us if you want to continue. So I would say yes, but something to keep in mind is that we are basically, here we are going to overwrite everything. So that's one caveat that we have here. The tool is all or nothing. We are going to improve that, but for the first version, this is how it goes. So I'm going to overwrite everything, and here instead of Bootstrap, what I'm going to choose is PatternFly. Okay, so basically confirmation license, and I will say yes. Again, it found two schemas, generated task, generated the forms, and I'm going to show you how this looks like. So while it starts, I'm going to show you the code in VS Code, so you can check it. Now you see that it has disappeared, and now you saw that the forms are different. Are basically a TSX file.
Change a little bit the font.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good.
Okay. You can see that the files right now are TSX, and basically here for each form we are generating a React functional component, basically, which is using the form for name is using form underscore form ID, and then we have all the states for all the inputs and outputs, etc. We have the same utility functions that we have in the HTML to set the form data, to get the form data. In this case, we're using a use callback here. We have the validate form, the after submit, etc. And then we have the use effect that is going to be called the first time that it's rendered to basically to call our open form API with the open, and we are storing the API in a state so it can be reused every day. Additionally, we have other utility functions like parse date, etc., that we can use basically because some controls require some functions. So some functions to basically convert the data that we're getting to a runtime to the value that the input requires, but we are adding everything here. So, and then you can see the JSX code that we generate, which basically we have the card with the candidate, address, the form group with the text input for the city, country, state, etc. So it's basically the same.
Now I want to see this in the dev UI. Do you have
Yeah.
like view?
Yeah, let's see if it's still starting. Let's give it 1 second. Okay.
Okay. So while we are waiting, another question that came up is where is that? How to use those custom forms in my production environment?
That's a good question. Actually, those forms they are basically you can use them by placing in your application and using them however you want, modifying them. But the API that we are generating is only to be at this point only works here in this environment of the Quarkus UI, and likely in the task console that we are going to try to have a similar experience with the custom forms. But something that we are considering and we can explore if we get good feedback on this is to have a kind of wrap this form component into a JS component that can be reused in different places. So you can basically have a kind of a JavaScript component that you can embed into your application and call and say, okay, I want to show the form for this task, and then it could do this work automatically for you and do establish the connection, etc. I don't know if this is answering the question.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And sorry. And and going back to the topic here in the form list, we saw that we have the same forms. You see that it's React now. And if we take a look here, we have the source code on the left, and on the right, the visualization of the form. And again, we have the same capabilities. I'm not going to do a lot of demos, but for example, if you want, I don't know, you can say, okay, I want to use a text area, and you can add the import here. And what you can do is, for example, let's search, okay, this text input, is the city, okay. I'm going to use a text area for this text input. I'm going to remove the type, etc. And yeah, if you press play, you see that right now the city is at exterior. So you can have the same experience. You can do live modifications, and if you save the form, the changes are going to be reflected in VS Code. The only caveat here is what I said. I mean, we cannot import and we cannot import external npm modules, etc. We only rely on React and PatternFly for now. That's something that probably you could do with using a connection to a JS file or something like that. But that's something that we cannot provide at this point with a regular import.
Great. Pere, we are over time.
Sorry.
So again, thank you very much. We have very good feedback. So people seems to be excited by this feature. It's not yet released, right? So, but it's about to come out.
Yeah. Hopefully in the next release we'll be there.
Yeah. So probably we watch for a blog post. I expect a blog post from you.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I will gladly write that blog post. We are really excited about this, Alex.
Thank you very much, Pere. Once again, it was very helpful. A good session, give us a great perspective of what's coming. And see you in the next session when we have these with more features. So thank you everyone that attended this session today. I hope it was useful for you. So leave comments. We'll keep an eye on that. Suggestion for new topics that we want to be covered here. So we cover in this the key community. We cover Drew's content, DMN, business process, serverless workflow, auto planner, anything related to business automation. We have a space here. Trusty AI, of course, and all the tools. So thank you for coming again this session, and hopefully to see you soon. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.